Just watched episode 6 of Agatha All Along. Something familiar. I can't remember the name, but it had that word familiar in it, which is what Agatha has been calling Billy for a while. Usually described as a pet. I have Mortimer, my pet, on my lap. So he's getting pets and loving all of this attention. But we got to talk about the episode of this week. So we're going to spoil it if you haven't seen the episode, but not like spoiling the rest of the show, just the episode. Just want to talk about it because it was an interesting episode, especially considering how it ties in to how this event usually takes place in the comics and how I think they did honestly pretty good job of weaving all together some characters and some ideas that they kind of threw out there that I'm not sure if were intentional or not, or if it could be misdirects, anything like that. And then talk about kind of where we go from here. So, all right, this episode was good. This was a flashback almost exclusively from Billy's point of view. It was the Billy story. After we found out that Billy was the Wiccan, whatever we're calling him, Scarlet Witch offspring, Billy Maximoff, I guess. Once we found that out last episode, then everybody was wondering, okay, well, then what happened? And this was kind of what we expected, which was some version of a child who was, brain dead or something like that, was kind of gets the Billy brain, which means someone else has the Tommy brain. And then that person is the Scarlet Witch's kid in another person's body. In the comics, the way I think this plays out, I'm not 100% positive, but I think so, is because it's kind of hard to explain. The beginning stuff happens the same. She has kids, they disappear, she gets very upset, her mind is wiped. When she gets her mind back, she uses magic to send the spirits of the children back 10 or 12 years so that those souls of Billy and Tommy are born into actual children who exist. So their souls, their, whatever you want to call it, essence is copied onto a newborn child. So that kid is raised their whole life, the Billy and the Tommy, thinking that they are just who they are. There's a little bit of there's something more. I can kind of feel it. I'm connected to something, but it's not nearly as explicit. They don't know about it like it's a past life that has been lived or it's this new identity. It's both. It's that they have the spirit of the Scarlet Witch's children, and I guess they're in the body of a kid who didn't have a consciousness. So what also is complicated is in the comics, Billy and Tommy, and we'll get into this maybe in the future, are identical twins. They are twins when they are born by Wanda and Vision. When they are brought back, even though they have actual parents that give birth to them that are not Wanda and Vision, it is like the Kaplans and the Shepherds, they give birth to two children, but they look exactly the same. They are identical twins, even though the people that birthed those children are not related in any way. So it's magic nonsense. In this, I think it's even tougher to do that because part of me thought, are we ever going to see Tommy? And then we had some options. One, we just hire a new actor for Tommy. Two, the kind of more fun option, but also it's way too hard and is it worth it, is you have Joe Locke, who's playing Billy, just play both. Put a wig on, do all kinds of stuff to make it seem like a different person, do Parent Trap basically. And this is kind of this episode is a little bit Parent Trappy because he got swept into a new body and he has to, live in that family. So the idea that you would have one actor playing both kids, totally possible until now, because now the children are not born with those, spirits in their body. The spirits of Wanda's kids find two bodies that are empty at the moment, people just dying or whatever, and then bring them back to life. So Tommy will look, I'm assuming, completely different from Billy for that reason. That's just something that I think is interesting. But that's how this is a little bit different than how this is usually done in the comics. But it's keeping the idea that they are both Wanda's children and also people that were raised by a completely different family. And that's what's kind of cool about Billy specifically. Tommy, I don't even think we ever really get into this, but Billy has parents and he lives with them. And they're they think what's going on is a little weird, but they're treat him like he is their son. They're not oh my God, you're a monster. And we don't really get to see the parents have that realization here because they don't find out about Billy. But I have to imagine the way they would play that with these parents is they would just be oh, we're still your parents, we still love you or something. It's just an interesting dynamic, especially when other superheroes come into the picture, like the boyfriend who we will get to. But we did meet a boyfriend today, a character named Eddie. So he's played by an actor named Miles Gutierrez Riley. This is an interesting one. So this guy seems to be Billy's long-term boyfriend. Billy has 3 years of being Billy, we learned, where he is just aware that he is the child of, well, no, he's not even aware that he's the child of Wanda, but he is aware that he is connected to them and he knows that he's kind of not the person like everyone expects him to be. He's not from this body. So he has this boyfriend, I'm assuming because A, they're young, right? They're still in high school, I think. And B, these guys are just saying I love you to each other. And also, like, there was no hint of Eddie before the crash. But it seems like this is someone he's met since the accident. So that's interesting. In the comics, Billy has one long-term relationship that matters, and it is to Teddy Altman, who is a character known as Hulkling, although they really should get rid of that name, because he is Emperor Doric VIII, a Skrull, who is like a Skrull who is sent to Earth because he is the person who's going to unite the Skrull and the Kree, and he shapeshifts into the form of a kid who thinks that, I think he thinks he's a mutant, but either way, he thinks he's a shapeshifter. He has no idea he's an alien. And that character's always been Billy's boyfriend in the comics, at least as long as we've known them. So it's interesting that we have a boyfriend here whose name is Eddie, so not Teddy, but close, but also maybe Dad misheard it. I don't remember if we actually saw a character say Eddie besides Dad saying it that one time. Maybe other characters do, but it also could be a nickname, maybe like his dad's Ted, so he calls himself Edward. I have no idea. It's definitely, if this wasn't the WandaVision people, I'd be like, that's probably what they're going for. But this is the WandaVision crew. These are the people that brought us Ralph Boner. So they're not above red herrings. But it's interesting, this kid fills some of the like details between Billy and Teddy. Like Teddy would be the one that's a little bit more skeptical. He's the one that's kind of more, I don't know, jockey isn't the right way to describe it. I mean, it kind of is in the comics, but he's like the, you know, taller one. So I could see this being Teddy. The one thing with Teddy is Marvel has had such a rough time with Skrulls. Between Secret Invasion and the Marvels, it's like the Skrull side of the MCU is maybe dragging down some other parts. It's not necessarily that. There's other reasons why some of those things didn't work as well as you would hoped, but maybe Marvel will be like, you know what, let's make him not a Skrull. Let's make him like something else. Maybe make him a mutant. You know, they love to make things mutants. I do think he should be a Skrull Kree, you know, person, because that's a big part of what makes that character interesting. But yeah, Skrulls are very uncool in the MCU right now, so I'd be surprised if they, I don't know. That's the only reason I think maybe we don't get that reveal. So those are my two pieces of like comic lore stuff. Besides that, I think this episode played the rest of it pretty interestingly. First of all, I like it's interesting to start with Bar Mitzvah. There's been a lot of discourse online about the fact that Jolok is both, I believe, not Jewish and also not Romani. Now, the Romani thing wouldn't make sense considering what they're doing here. And the way that Marvel does this, like none of the Maximoff characters have been played by Roma actors, so no, not surprised by that. But like technically the body of this character shouldn't be related to the Scarlet Witch, so okay. But then the issue of whether, you know, he should be played by a Jewish person or not, I don't know what the right answer to that is. I do think it's good that they didn't ignore that part of Billy's history, because I also think like Jolok is just perfect casting. Like he's a super popular kid who is known. Wormer is very excited about hearing about Jolok. Sweetie, oh my god. I think it's tough because Jolok is really perfect for this role. He's been fan cast a bazillion times. He's a big like actor who people know from another show that kids really like young people. And he's known for playing like a young queer kid in a relationship. So it's like perfect. So it's like, I understand why they chose to do this instead of find a new actor or something like that, whatever. But sometimes one of the issues that might be as important as that is whether or not that part of the character is represented in the material. So Billy is traditionally Jewish, so I kind of like that they started with the actual bar mitzvah. I like that they did a little bit of reading of the Torah and then they went straight to the actual bar mitzvah part of the bar mitzvah, because like the party part, because I have worked a million of those when I was a waiter, and it looks perfect. Like they nailed it. We do know that Billy is from Eastview, which is the city next to Westview. Neither of these places are real, although we did see a map of New Jersey. It seems like they're around Trenton, which makes sense because we also get a little bit of the Philadelphia, Mayor of Easttown connection, even though what she's doing seems to be more of a Delco accent. But either way, we're in the part of New Jersey that borders Pennsylvania. That's where crazy stuff happens, so that makes sense. I do think it was interesting to see the other witches here. Obviously, Lilia, played by Patty LuPone, had the biggest actual role. Cool to learn that she made the sigil. Kind of sucks that it was made, because it seems like it was protecting him from Agatha, but I think it was also protecting him from Wanda inadvertently, potentially. Like no witch, even Lilia, could know he existed, but then maybe if Wanda knew her son was alive, she wouldn't have gone and done Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I don't know. I also think we saw a lot of posters, I don't know why specifically for him, for Houdini on Billy's wall. It seems like Billy original Billy was a huge Houdini fan, which I have no problem with. I think it's fine. I kind of wish there was a little bit more skepticism going into the palm reading, because I believe Houdini was a big skeptic when it came to supernatural stuff, specifically like seances. But I think it's interesting if you have this character who originally would be very skeptical of witches and stuff like that, and then we're throwing little Billy's like soul into his body, and it's like, oh, okay, so this guy doesn't like witches at all, and then personality really shifts. I don't know. I'm glad that we kind of subverted the car accident cliche. There's too many movies like Dark Phoenix, Shazam starts like this, Mithrigan starts like this, where there's just a really nothing conversation going on inside a moving car, and then like, okay, so this car is gonna hit something or something, and these ones are gonna die. But it's usually that the parents are killed and the kid survives. In this, Billy died and the parents are alive. So that's interesting. We also saw Ali Ann's character. She was a policeman, like we have heard. People have mentioned that this character also exists in comics very briefly. Like the way that sometimes when I'll say something, I'll be like, yeah, that's not really a character from the comics. People say, oh my God, no, we love her. And I'll be like, oh, wow, how did I miss this character? And you look it up online. It's like, oh, she's been in 3 things. Okay. But yeah, she was a witch, was the daughter of another witch who Doctor Strange knew back in the day. And she uses guns, they're magic guns, to fight witch-based magic crime or whatever. So that's kind of cool. She doesn't have that now, but it's cool to see. We did get a lot of like other references to things. The Black Cauldron, Wizard of Oz was on Billy's wall. I think we're going to see more of that in the future. But, Billy Kaplan was a big fan of witches, so it's very convenient that the witch's kid managed to, like, take his body. I do think we were talking about Eddie. There was that one line where Eddie said, well, if you're not Billy Kaplan, then who are you? That was a little bit like, who are you? Like, this is a somewhat suspicious line that is being read by a character who like knows a little bit more than they're letting on. Maybe that's just me, kind of projecting that. But if it turns out that Teddy, is a secret Skrull, that's him being like, if you're not him, are you a Skrull? Is that what you are? Because that would be interesting. Or are you a mutant, which is what he would think he is. I also think it's really interesting that when they're looking over the hex, he's like, oh, wait, it was aliens? He's the one who jumps to aliens because he's maybe secretly an alien. He doesn't even know. I will say my favorite part of this episode, like single thing, because there were parts of it that I love, parts that were great that we'll talk about. But I really, really liked hearing about the events of WandaVision from the perspective of characters outside of WandaVision. So hearing Eddie say like, wait, wasn't that just like an Avengers training exercise? I love that there is a cover up in the real world that nobody really knows what happened in Westview. I do think it's a little strange that the people of Westview know, but don't talk about it, but also know that Agatha is a witch or was a witch or something. Like, it seems like the people of Westview fully know what happened in Westview. So wouldn't they know that Agatha was a witch? And wouldn't they be a little bit more concerned that she lives next to them? Wouldn't like Doctor Strange be concerned about that? But I don't know, whatever. I also can't help but point out one of the newspapers that Billy has in his little collage uses the wrong "it's" for its headline. So that's Jersey for you. Okay, now a big surprise this episode, Bonerific 69. Ralph Boner has returned. I think he's great. I like Evan Peters a lot, and I think he's very funny here. I like that he is a conspiracy theorist because, again, this is how people in this universe would react, especially if you were in the Ralph Boner situation. You would be, terrified of witches. I kind of wanted, when we were looking at which conspiracy theorists, I knew it wasn't going to be this guy, but I kind of wanted it to be J.B. Smoove from the Spider-Man movies, only because that character had talked about witches before. I don't know, maybe like their handle would have been on a message board or something where you would have been like, oh, yeah, he's still going. And he's still spreading the good word about witchcraft. So I don't know. That would have been cute. But yeah, I think the Ralph Boner thing was fun. I love that he mentioned Paramus. Second time Paramus has been mentioned in the MCU. First time being in Captain America 1, where that is one of the places that Steve is from in the little dossiers. So, another Paramus mention. I have one question that I do. And this isn't me trying to like pick apart the show, be like, they got it wrong. But it's just like, I want to know what the explanation for this is and what the answer is. When Billy is trying to figure out what happened, when he, reads Pietro's mind or whatever, Ralph Boner's mind. Also a great, funny name on the internet, Bonerific 69, very funny t-shirt. that the Boner family wears. They're clearly in on the joke, which is great, which you have to be, right? Like you there's no way you could just be the Boner family and people would say, oh yeah, I never thought of that before. So they make it their whole thing. That's fun. So when Billy gets this information, he starts kind of figuring out what he's going to do, making his plan. He decides to get Tommy because he knows that Tommy existed. And he can tell because he knew when he woke up, he's like, Tommy. He decides that Vision, like, can't get Vision. Vision's been disassembled or something. No one knows what happened to him. And he hasn't been, right? Like, at that point, they should know that White Vision disappeared, but whatever. Not like they should know, but like, I think Ralph Boner would know, kind of. Would you even know that that's what happened with Vision? I don't know. White Vision's out there somewhere. But then characters seem to know that Wanda is dead. Especially Billy. And I'm just wondering, like, in universe, how do we know that? Did Doctor Strange do an Instagram live or something and tell everybody, by the way, guys, the Scarlet Witch just died? Because the events of Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, like, they kind of take place in public a little bit, but not the Wanda parts. And she dies in, like, Wonder War Mountain. And it's a very, like, unless you're a sorcerer, how would you have heard about that? So I'm curious, is there a website for the Avengers where like one of them dies in an outer space mission or, you know, under the molten core of the earth or something? They just update it with like, oh, by the way, that one died. And then like, do people get sad or do people hate Wanda now? So maybe that wouldn't even be on the Avengers website. But yeah, like how do people know this? Because as far as they knew, she flew away and that was it. It's weird because like Kamar-Taj is not Kunlun. Kunlun in the comics is an ancient city that you can get to, you know, through magic and stuff, right? That's where Iron Fist is trained. Kamar-Taj, as we see in Doctor Strange 1, is just like a place, right? Like you can go there and you could be, you know, led there by another person. But like hypothetically, anyone could go there. So when Wanda showed up in Multiverse of Madness, just started blowing it up, were people on the ground in other parts of Tibet or wherever this is, like looking at it like, what the hell? That's Wanda, I think. She's the red one. She's probably her. Because then that'd be weird. Love the secret message boards. I love the idea that Agatha did the Hindenburg and the Titanic. Because, like, I don't know, those are just pretty weird natural disasters. I feel like they're not like the Bermuda Triangle or something. This is the thing with this. Have her disappear the Roanoke colony or something. Or have her, you know, oh God, what's another like mystery thing of like a historical event or something where everybody doesn't know what it is. Amelia Earhart, you know, Agatha stole Amelia Earhart, as opposed to this where it's like, I thought it was an ice. Was Agatha on the ice thing? Did she make it so that it hit the thing? And then like the Hindenburg, it's like, wow, how could that have even exploded? I don't know. I guess it was just filled with a flammable, you know, gas. It just seems like, I don't know. It seems like weird that they chose those things. Like Jolene, I loved the idea that she is the Jolene in the Jolene song. I would love it if that was the version of this. I don't even know what the other versions of that would be. But if she was, every time there was a woman in history who did something bad or was like really infamous for something, it was her. I can't think of too many others in American history where it's like nobody knows who that was. We all know who, like, you know, Squeaky Fromm was or whatever. I do think it's interesting that he wants Tommy. I really thought we'd be getting Wanda back at the end of this show. But the idea that we're going to get Tommy maybe by the end of this show is pretty surprising. Mostly because just he's like a low profile guy when it comes to the Young Avengers. The idea that, you know, we have a Patriot, but he doesn't have superpowers yet. He barely does Patriot stuff. We have a Kate Bishop, so that's important. We have a Cassie, but we don't have a Hulkling, and we don't have an Iron Lad, and we'll probably never get an Iron Lad. But we are maybe going to have a Speed. Just feels a little strange. I loved seeing the events of episode 1 outside of the Mayor of Easttown filter. That felt like one of those things that, you see this in Marvel stuff all the time, where clearly this is a scene where the characters are like trying to be so over the top that they almost break, and you can kind of see it in that scene where she keeps saying, do you want to poke the bear? And like they keep going back and forth. I do think the two of them have really good chemistry in all of the bits where they're just kind of talking back and forth and like clearly improvising things like clicking the pen. I thought that all worked really well. Loved when she went off on that one syllable about him either being a loser or a liar, because that really is like, it's a silly accent. And then that brought back my other question. Do the people of Westview know Agatha's a witch? Do they care? Because it seems like they know she's weird, but Ralph Boner, did he have to sell her his house? Is she squatting in his house? He doesn't live there anymore. That was his house before she showed up and was like, I'm here now. But then, like, I guess nobody liked him. He seems like maybe he's a weird guy, but nobody in the village is like, we should probably get Ralph his house back. But it's also weird that nobody protected Ralph. Nobody was like, we gotta help Ralph out. I don't know. Maybe Ralph did seem to just disappear. And then Agatha was there. I mean, maybe they think that Agatha's like a normal person, but it doesn't seem like Wanda put a spell over anybody but Agatha in that instance. And then also this idea that like Mrs. Hart was getting involved in all the witches stuff without really knowing about it. It's like, if the people of Westview knew about that, wouldn't you be like, oh, this is more witch stuff, shoot, right? Because you're the evil witch from before. You used to, yeah, your memories were wiped, but clearly they're back. We're doing evil witch stuff now. I'm probably going to duck out of that. I mean, like, it's hard to write something like that where all this stuff works together perfectly, but it's just like a kind of a fun, there used to be a thing in Marvel called a no prize. This was a comics thing. I wish they still did it. I would love to have one where you would find a continuity error, but then instead of just pointing it out, you would figure out how it could actually be true. So you would say, like, this character says this, but he didn't know that until this issue. You would point that out. Then you go, but actually we can find out, maybe he heard about it on the news or something, like something like that. There used to be like an actual slip of paper. Okay, one other thing. When Eddie and Billy are texting, Eddie texts Billy a heart emoji, but it is a black heart. Now, this is the third time something like this has happened on the show. First, you have obviously Mrs. Hart, which I wouldn't say is like heart, except back when WandaVision episode 1, that was like the heart was on the calendar and there was like the heart. So I do think like her name being Hart isn't, you know, you gotta include it in this. But then the big two, this bit with the emoji, and then the character played by Aubrey Plaza saying, I have a black heart, Agatha, and it beats for you. I guess part of me is wondering, what is that? Because obviously Blackheart is son of the devil in Marvel Comics, but also I've heard people theorizing that Blackheart is what was the last name on the list. I don't think we ever saw the list that Lillian gave Agatha. Like, we didn't see all the names on it, but whatever it was, Agatha really wanted to hide it. So maybe her in that moment hearing a character say Blackheart and then seeing a Blackheart made her go like, oh shoot, it's her. And then that's why she eats it. It's possible that that was referring to Billy, and that is a Billy thing. So that's interesting. Again, could you connect any of these characters together? Billy and Rio don't seem to be working together. Rio and Eddie could maybe be working together, or he could be an agent of hers or something. I think it'd be crazy if he turned out to be like Nicholas Scratch or Mephisto or something like that. Just because then it would be like a weird relationship with this teen. I don't know, just the idea of the Blackheart coming up again, interesting. And then like the whole idea at the end where Agatha and Billy are talking and she's like, you can't be ashamed of your powers. It's just how witches do. We survive, and like they're gonna make you feel ashamed, but don't. I like that as being what makes Agatha likable, or what she can teach Billy over the course of this show, because it is something that all the other witches don't seem to get, but Agatha does understand that like you have to be your authentic self, which is something you could, you know, see reflected in other themes in the show. So that's interesting. I do think if there's one like kind of criticism of this episode, no Aubrey Plaza, and I do think I enjoy an episode like this that fills in parts of the backstory. You know, I do want to see everything move forward, but I'm sure, you know, we've got 3 more episodes, 1 next week and I think 2 the week after, so that'll be fun. And you know, that's time for at least 2 more trials. I think we know kind of which 2, and then whatever, some resolution. But I think the pacing of this episode was great, nice long one, and it feels like this is like a really good 2/3 of the way through point for this show. This show feels very well paced, and now this episode reveal, like episode 6, makes, I'd say, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4 way better now. It makes watching them more interesting, and it makes the parts of them that you're like, why are we doing this? Now they totally make sense. And I appreciate that. And again, one of the problems with some of the Marvel shows and any other show that's not totally working is that it's being rewritten and stuff. So you're like, oh, this clearly doesn't fit in with this, but it's just because this was in the original script and this wasn't. I like that this does feel like this was the original script, or this was at least like they decided to shoot this and then that's what we got. And that's how it all blends very well together. And, you know, that could be just me liking it and then giving it a lot of deference in areas where, like in another show, I'd be more picking it apart, like with Secret Invasion, where you're like, oh, there's no way this was always what was happening with him. But I don't know. It just does feel like the show is a well-oiled machine. I'm very glad that it is doing well. Between this and Penguin, you know, these two guys over here, people are loving it. Then we got Venom back there. Very excited for him. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching this video. You know, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I will see you next week for more Agatha, and then, you know, other videos between now and then. We got Comic-Con coming up, so I'll probably want to talk about some of the things that I see at that, because I will be there on Saturday of this, you know, this Saturday at some point. So keep an eye on Twitter and everything for that, for my whereabouts. But besides that, yeah, stay safe. I'll see you around.